Today I'm going to take a look at the lights in my Marantz 2215B. Like for example this tuning meter light, I don't like it at all, and the rest of it seems kind of weak too, and some of the pilot lamps are out, so I'm going to go ahead and swap those. I've got LEDs now. Normally I don't like to use LEDs because I like to keep everything original, but I just didn't like this setup at all. So I am going to take a closer look now. Now I printed out the block diagram, and here I noticed this little box here. It says dial lamps, and there's 5 of them in there. And then there's the meter lamp, which I don't like. And by tracing this back, I noticed these run off of AC. There's a secondary on the power transformer. This is where these lamps get their power from. So, and there's a pointer light, and there's a stereo light. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the meter lamp first. Now I was able to figure out that the lamp was actually down in here where my stick is at, so that means I have to remove this here. And you have to be aware that your dial string here, the dial cord, is actually attached to this. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this carefully, hold on to it, and then fix the dial string here somewhere so I can go ahead and keep the tension on this whole mechanism here tight. I don't want anything coming loose or coming off of a little pulley or something like that. So I got the dial cord out of the way. I use a little tie wrap here, and I use have like little plastic clamps, and that's holding the dial cord to the chassis. So even in case I slip or something and this drops, all the rest of this isn't going to go anywhere. Kind of overkill, but at least I know I can put everything back together easily. And once that screw came out, the rest of the assembly came out, and you can see here the actual lamp there. And all we need to do is get a little tool down in here. And that should pop right out. Now here's my replacement. I think I had a choice of 2 colors, either blue or warm white, and I opted to go for blue. I don't know how it's going to look. I'll find out. Also, the original bulbs here, they run off of AC. Of course, the LEDs run off of DC, so there has to be some kind of a rectifier in here. So it was just, rather than do all this myself, I went ahead and opted to buy them. Here you can see something right there. There seems to be like the rectifier here. And this was just an easier way to go. Now I noticed these were a little bit thinner. They didn't fit right. They were a little bit too loose. So I just went ahead and I squeezed these prongs here of the lamp, or rather fuse holders, together with my fingers. Now it's sitting there quite tight. So now comes the big moment. Okay, that looks a lot better. I think I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. Now if I look through the camera viewer, it really seems to be really glary, but if I don't look through the glare, it seems to be quite good. I really like it. Now in order to get the other fuse lamps out, I'm going to have to remove this screw here, and there's one on the other side, and this assembly should just, this metal assembly here should just pull back. And here's the assembly here. Everything came out nicely. I'll very carefully take these out and put the new lamps in and see what happens. Now the next test, and actually looks pretty good. I don't think I really have to, there's change the diffusion paper on this thing behind the dial plate, so I can leave this exactly like it is. The only thing a little bit different is it seems here like with the LEDs there's an instant on, not like when you turn on a light bulb, which takes a millisecond longer, but that really doesn't bother me. But I guess if I really wanted to, I could do something about that too. But I'll go ahead and leave it like that for now. Now here's the view from a little bit farther away. So next I'm looking at the dial pointer light, and in order to get this little black cover off, I had to use two of these things. They're like made for opening up cell phones and stuff like that, and there's a tab on each side of this little plastic case here, and I put them under and then carefully pried up. You really have to be careful because this thing can break really easy. Now in order to get this metal tab off, I use the same procedure. I use this here, and then I slowly pry the thing up, and there it goes. And if we take a look at the bulb here, we can see that the end here is darkened and looks like the filament's open, so I guess that explains that. It's just an old bulb. Now I'm going to take a look at the stereo indicator light. It still works, but I'm going to go ahead and replace it since everything else is new. All the other lights are new. Basically, they're all LED now. So I'm going to go ahead and take a closer look at this and then go from there. I had to take a quick look at the schematic, and right now I'm looking at the power supply board, and at pin J814, that's where we get the voltage for the stereo indicator light. That's a DC voltage, not AC, and it looks like here it shows 10 volts and 7.3. The 10 volts, for example, would be if you're in between stations or you're in mono mode, and the 7.3 volts would be when you're actually tuned into a stereo station. So, and I've got the lamp holder out. That was just held in with 2 Phillips screws. And I'm going to try to use a light application of heat to remove the glue or to soften the glue up. So I'm actually getting there. The glue is starting to soften up. Enough, and I found here a 5mm LED that I had laying around, which has already been sanded, and I'm going to go ahead and try this here. We'll do a little practice test. Now I have the LED in the lamp holder, and I have a DC power supply hooked up across the LED. I'm going to go ahead and turn the power supply up to about 2.5 volts and see what happens. The Marantz itself is completely off. It's not hooked up to anything. So we'll take it up to 2.5 volts. I think this is what this LED is rated for. And now we can see this is not bright enough. Now if I look through the camera, through the screen of the camera, it looks bright, but once I move my head to the side, I can see this is definitely not what I'm looking for. So I need to get a different LED. Now I did manage to get a replacement LED for the stereo indicator light. In fact, I picked up 3 LEDs, a warm white, a cold white, and a red LED. And the warm white and cold white have disappeared. So that leaves me with the red LED, which I now have hooked up to a DC power supply. And I'm going to put the LED into the lamp holder basically and just take a quick look of how it looks. So So I'm now ready to apply power. And it's sure brighter. The only thing I don't like in the middle is all of the light is concentrated in the middle here. So I'm going to go ahead and try to sand the LED in order to make the light more diffused and give it more even lighting. Too bad I lost those LEDs. So I managed to sand the LED with fine sandpaper. Well, it was 150 grit actually. And now it looks a lot better. It's a lot more, the lighting is a lot more even. So I think I could probably leave it at this for now until I pick up 2 more replacement LEDs and try them out. But this seems to look okay. Now this is a little mock-up I did here. This is not the final look here. For one thing, the LED here is still loose. I'm going to have to use hot glue and glue that in. The leads here are going to have to be shortened, and I'm going to use shrink tubing over the whole thing too. So that's going to be taken care of. And right now I'm using a 470 ohm resistor. I started out with that, or rather I'm using that. And if you wanted to, of course you could start out with 1,000 ohms and work your way down. Now I'm going to go ahead and see what the voltage drop is across the resistor. I'm going to measure across the resistor, and since I know the ohms here, this is 467 ohms, then I can go ahead and figure out the power here. Now the meter is showing me 7 volts DC, and as I mentioned, I know the resistance 467 ohms, so I take this 7 volts and I times it by itself, or rather I square it. That'll give me 49, and then I divide that by 467, and that'll give me the power at the moment. So I'll go ahead and do that quickly on paper. Now here's my math. I took P equals V squared over R. The V squared, of course, is the voltage across the resistor, and that came out to 49 if I took 7 times 7, and the resistance of the resistor is 467 ohms, and that came out to 0.105 watts. Now you always have to have a safety margin. Say, for example, if I just found out that I was using 0.5 watts instead, half a watt, I wouldn't put in a half watt resistor. I would go ahead and double that resistor to 1 watt just to be on the safe side. And here we can see 0.105 watt, and right now I'm using a quarter watt resistor, 0.250 watt resistor. So basically, if I double the 105, I'm still on the safe side. So I can go ahead and leave that in there. But of course, if you didn't have anything else, you could also use like a half watt. And to measure the voltage drop across the resistor, we simply put the meter in the DC volts position and put the test leads across the resistor. So when it's all done, it's going to look something like this. I've got the shrink tubing up there. I still have to heat it, and I have to use a little bit of my hot glue and put a dab of that on the LED, and that should take care of this light. So I think I'm about done with this video. I still have to do the dial pointer light, but I ordered a part from China and it might take a couple of weeks to get here. It's a little AC to DC converter. It's really tiny, and I still have to use a dropping resistor with it, but I just want to try it out one time. I think what I could also did here is put 2 LEDs in here and connect them in anti-parallel, meaning when one was on, the other one would be off. Of course, you'd still have to use a dropping resistor, but I'm not quite so sure if I still would be able to see the flicker, since you are running off of an AC source here. But I might try that in the future sometime, see how that works out. You'd have to get like 2 really small LEDs and put them side by side, and if they don't fit in here, I guess you'd have to grind them down and then glue them together and put them in here, and then try that out.